So thank you for enrolling in the Foundations to the Loyalty Loop course. It's my intention throughout this course is just to give you like a primer to get you roughly acquainted with the concept of keeping people in long-term care that measures kind of beyond the adjustment. So I'd like to thank you actually for enrolling. I know there's a lot of chiropractic products out there, especially in the realm of retention. But if your goal for your practice in the coming 12 months is a good top-heavy focus on retention, I'm sure you'll find this material really valuable. It will take a little bit of time, maybe an hour or so to get through, but thank you anyway. I really don't take your trust in my work lightly at all. So why listen to me? For those that don't know me, I'm the author of 2 books. It's called Keep Your Clients is one, which has got all the vortex elements in here that you'll need in your practice for high retention. And the other one is the CA School, and that's essentially a toolkit for CAs to learn how to distribute the Vortex tools within your community so that they can work on retention, referrals and reactivations really quite well from the front office. I've completely obsessed over this topic of retention. We did build a single location office just north of Amsterdam in a small village where we had 5 chiropractors working. I only needed 1 new client for every 2,000 to 2,500 returning visits. It didn't happen immediately, of course, but I did do it consecutively for about a 6-year period. So there's really strengthened the metrics. Since then though, a lot of our associates also had, PVAs up around the 1,800 to 2,000. But not only that, you might think, okay, so that's him, that's his office, what about other chiropractors? Well, I've since put this Vortex and Loyalty Loop system into about 150 different chiropractic offices, and the results are quite consistent across the board. I'm currently practicing in Singapore. My wife is also a chiropractor, Jyoti, so we have a small boutique office in the middle of Singapore, and I'm the creator of the Vortex retention system and the loyalty loop. But it hasn't always been straightforward and easy for me, of course. I've spent many wasted years just trying to cognitively vomit the idea of chiropractic onto my clients, and I kind of did that long enough, I had so many people that didn't quite understand or that I didn't kind of judge so well. I had clients that made me really tired. I had clients that made me really energized when I saw them in the agenda. So it's been a really big long-term trial for me. But we were, just to give to you some sort of context, Jyoti and I, we're not from business families at all. So after 3 years of growing the practice, we really couldn't even afford our tax bill. We just had no financial cues or planning or any idea how to run the business. But the practice was growing, so we ended up jumping on an aeroplane and flying over to Houston to spend 10 days with Dr. John DeMartini, and we did his financial mastery course. And that got me quite obsessed about the whole business around chiropractic, for want of a better word. I've spent over 200,000 euros attending chiropractic seminars throughout the world, from Australia, America, Europe. We also took our team every year to chiropractic seminars as a part of our team training. And the other thing is, I know what works in a live living chiropractic office. And how do I know that? Is because I really just test all this stuff within a chiropractic office. So we took about 8 years, I think, to really land on what was a beautiful cadence, rhythm, and kind of like a customer experience to go through in the course of 6 months. Even the newsletters, we really nailed the frequency at which we do newsletters. We also, sometimes we did them too often, which was too much work for me, but it was also too much to consume for the clients. Other times we did them not frequently enough, or randomly at worst, or sometimes we didn't even do it. But we noticed if we got onto the quarterly rhythm, that was the rhythm that really fit our practice really well. I also have visited more than 500 chiropractic offices worldwide. I love chiropractic. I love the whole nuances that go on in the waiting room, and I'm just a real explorer and a complete obsessor over what keeps people in chiropractic care a long time. I'm an avid reader. I read typically 30 books a year, and I've been doing that for about 15 years. I've read extensively on retention as far as service-based industries go, and often outside of the realm of the chiropractic office, but then what I'll do, I'll extrapolate the ideas from these authors, and then I'll put them into the context of how I can use that in my own chiropractic office. Okay, so if we think about a journey with your chiropractic office, so I just want to sketch how I go about just really setting up a high retention system. And we talk about practice hell on one end, let's say, and for me that's just a massive client drop-off or potentially overwhelm or lots of complexity happening in a practice. And then all the way on the other side is to practice heaven, and that's where we really optimize the retention. We get an extremely predictable revenue, And the end result from that is we have lifestyle freedom and lifestyle choice. So there's a journey. I break it down into 3 parts. First, what we need to do is build your practice. And under the practice, there's 3 main things. We need to make a really consistent branding for your practice that will stand the test of time. It's beyond the scope of this film, but it's not just going to a graphic designer and asking them to make a logo. There's just a lot that goes on with branding. The interior design of your practice needs to be really well thought about, and it needs to match the values of the people you want to see long term. And it needs to be beautiful, clean, of course. And selling chiropractic, you need to be great at selling it on the front end. The beauty about long-term clients is though you start to see their buying patterns. So they transform from people that you sell to at the front end, which you need to do really well, to people that actually buy from you, actually more from your CA over the long term. And then the second phase of building a high retention office is to plug in what we've called the retention vortex system. And essentially there's 3 main big things that hold this all together. First, we have our welcome booklet. So that's this thing here. It's not an imparter of information. This is to actually create intrinsic motivation in a client and to have them coming back to this document for the first 28 days of their life. It's a beautiful document. But it will change the reason why most people come into chiropractic care. You've got about 4 weeks to do that, in my opinion. Then we've got the quarterly newsletter. That's the glue that holds the retention together, the whole vortex together. So we bring a newsletter out every quarter. I'll talk about them a little bit later in the film, but we do all sorts of different topics. Once again, it's beautiful. It's a call to action on the back with just simply book online. But this has got its own rhythm to it too. Now, as far as chiropractors go, if you do want to get something beautiful into the hands of people that really matter, and I do believe that not all clients are created equally, you want to make your office really shareable on a consistent basis to the people who matter most within your chiropractic office. And then we've got your lending library. So like I said, I'm a reader. We use our lending library to especially create referrals when people are lurking in the lending library, reactivations from people who haven't been into care for a little while but still have got one of our lending library books lent out, so that's a nice easy way for us to reach out to them. And we also use it for getting referrals. For when people lend books, we always give 2 bookmarks with the book that we're lending. Third part is the rhythm. And so you can't really have a high retention office without a rhythm, a robust rhythm. What's nice about a rhythm is that once you get a rhythm in some parts of your practice, you kind of get it everywhere. And your clients will really start to know what's coming next. Your staff will know what's coming next too. So team culture, that's a big one to build on rhythm. Table talk. You know, there's really a strong rhythm to how an everyday consult goes and how I do that to match and link the chiropractic adjustment with values that people have held long before they've come into chiropractic care. And the last one is the community event or community challenge. To build a high retention office, you do need to get your favorite people together periodically. We do it twice a year in your office so that they all meet each other, they all speak to one another, and it's just a very pleasant, different context for the community to get to know you. So if you look at those 3 phases, you have building your practice, building your vortex, and building your rhythm. When you link up building your practice and building your rhythm, you get a real message clarity that comes through your branding document, the way you design your office and the way you sell chiropractic. And then building the vortex, you've got those 3 main parts that I just went over. But when you combine building your vortex with building the rhythm, that's when you start to notice a shift in the objective metrics of your retention metrics of your office, because we get a lot more repeated adjustments a lot easier. And once you've built your rhythm, and that's the 3rd piece of the pie, we get a very predictable revenue. High retention office doesn't really have big months and little months. It's really kind of a steady Eddie kind of approach once you've hit where you want to get to. And then the overlap, it's quite small between these 3, but that's where the hidden gem is. That's where the lifetime clients are found. It's a worthy pursuit, in my opinion. I want to be transparent with you how long it takes to put my retention vortex into your chiropractic office, because I don't want to sugarcoat the work in any way. It is a lot of hard work to set up. It does compound, which means it gets better results over time with less effort. But yeah, the first part is all about creating your vortex. So you're not going to see in the first 6 months, you're going to be building your welcome booklet and acquainting yourself with it. You're going to be building your quarterly newsletters and acquainting your team with how to use those for referrals, retention and reactivations. But there's a lot of building going on, and there's not a hell of a lot of metric increase. And that's the nature of a PVA metric. It's a slow moving one. The second part is like the second 6 months, and that's where you start to refine the use of it, of the Vortex tools. That's when your team starts to get trained. That's when you've had one cycle of, let's say, half the Vortex elements built. The second 6 months, you've kind of had your first cycle of everything built. And it's that third 6 months where you've got a trained team, all the Vortex elements are in, everybody knows what's going on, the rhythm's in place, the team are trained, and that's when you see like a kind of a hockey stick change in your retention metrics. So what happens if you don't really put a Vortex into your office? In my opinion, there's a few different options that can happen. One is if you keep needing loads and loads of new clients, burnout is a real option, and it's a big part more and more now of chiropractors. The second thing is you can remain essentially in startup. Even when your office is 10 years old, you're just kind of essentially swapping one new person for the next. Then the next part up is just having some growth with effort. Once the Vortex get in, you get a lot more traction in your office. You've still got a lot more effort, but this is where momentum starts to creep in. Once momentum starts, it's a really massive traction change. And the last part is when you've got a lot more growth, ease, confidence in just your stability and reliability of your chiropractic office. But it's hard work at the start, but it's not super fast at the start. It's almost like making something smooth first, and eventually smooth things become extremely fast. Okay, but you need to take the right steps at the right time, once again, to avoid overwhelm. I've put this Vortex into about 150 chiropractic offices now, and there is potential for overwhelm if you don't take the right steps at the right time. So I just want to walk you through a simple roadmap. So first, we decide that retention is going to be a major focus for your practice for the coming 12 months, and we set up a strategy for that. Then we need to ensure that your office has got some great branding. Many of you have already got a great brand deck, but some of you have got more like a Frankenstein branding that's built by different graphic designers at different periods over time. So one graphic designer might say to you, oh, I really like, do you like that? And you'll be like, yes. And then the next graphic designer in a different company or somewhere else in the world that you've rented, they might give you a totally different proposal that you also like. And all of a sudden you start to combine all these things. So we want to make sure that the practice is consistently branded, and it takes the test of time. It stands the test of time that this branding from your office just needs to last about at least 10 years. It's a lot of decisions at the start, but it might take you 2 or 3 months to really get that sorted out. But then you can just use it for 10 years. And because a lot of my Vortex elements are designed and branded and come in print form, it's just really important that you come across in an extremely organized way, and that's what branding is. Then we write the copy for retention. The language of retention is quite different than the language of new patient acquisition, simply because sellers turn into long-term buyers, and there's a certain sequence and a step-by-step path that needs to be followed in an orderly way. Then we design your Vortex tools. This is where the rubber kind of hits the road, and we start building all your tools. We get them printed locally around your office, and we get them into the hands of your community, your staff, yourself, and everybody just starts to touch things. And of course, we build a very nice rhythm for that. So the 6-month rinse and repeat Vortex rhythm is extremely reliable once you get it in. I'm a big believer that the freedom to practice is really found in the systems that you put in. And most chiropractic offices, ironically, don't have a retention system. They have a lot of onboarding systems. They do it great up to the first 2 to 4 months of chiropractic care. But as a profession globally, we've got a real problem. On the one hand, we're standing here with lifetime chiropractic care. On the other hand, the general public wants symptom relief. And how do we just ascend clients through their level of understanding of chiropractic in a skillful way? Great. And then, of course, we train your team for maximum results. I do want to thank my CAs in Holland for this, because Some of these tools have been in development now for 20 years, but essentially they were built by my CAs. And CAs don't have the curse of knowledge that I have, so they knew what really worked and what was dogmatic and what was too over the top of people's heads. They just really built an extremely robust rhythm that at least they could rely on. I was going off to seminars here and there and reading books and wanting to change things all the time. But our CAs just really liked a very stable rhythm to come into the practice. So they built these tools and we made them a very consistent timing. So like I said, we've probably looked at more than 100 different vortex elements that we've put into the practice, and our litmus test to see if we're going to continue with them is community engagement. And I don't mean just the outliers and 5% of the practice engaging with it. I'm talking like a big 80% chunk of clients go, yeah, that's a great idea, we'll get into that, we'll adopt into that, right? So Jack Dorsey, he's one of my favorite entrepreneurs. He's the founder of Twitter, and I love this quote from him: limit your choice of details and then really focus on those details. So make those details that you end up choosing extremely high quality and beautiful. And so with the vortex, not all clients are created equally. 20% of your clients will refer 80% of your new patients. 20% of your clients will be responsible for 80% of the revenue of your practice. 20% of your efforts will produce 80% of your results. And the vortex is very leveraged like that. So I'm not going to waste your time with trial and error. The things that are in the vortex that I'll really recommend that you introduce into your practice for retention and referrals, they're just tried and tested, so they do have a high yield of result. One nice thing about these vortex elements, although they are a bit of work to get acquainted with and to build and to brand and to get into your office, they do compound over time. So what does that mean? Like if you have like a newsletter, for example, this one's on headaches. If you write one newsletter randomly, and a lot of chiropractors do, that doesn't really shift the dial too much on your chiropractic office. But if you've got like 6 or 8 of these laying around, like over time, these things become a great archive in our practice. So we've got newsletters, for example, on, don't know if you can see that so well, but men's health, the anxious brain, and these are things that built over the course of like 4 years now. Your body's a part of nature, which is one of the value newsletters we're looking at. Back pain, poor energy levels or energy for life. Headaches you've already seen. Chiropractic care in your pregnancy. And you can just see, why we sleep. You can see how beautiful they are collectively. So one's not going to change much, but after you've been doing it for a couple of years with this quarterly rhythm, these become an archive of tools that your clients can pick up, take, collect, and share with their friends. So what is the vortex? So some of my critics with my work, they will say to me, oh, you're not really focusing on chiropractic, you're doing other things. And the truth of the matter is, it's a bit like this concept of an art gallery. And that is, it's a very simple concept, but I propose to you that the photo that you're looking at right now, the art in that photo would stand out way, way less if it wasn't for the supporting white walls and the supportive lighting and the blank floor. If the art gallery was busy with wallpaper or distractions or randomness, then I propose that that art would look a lot less attractive. And so in this concept, the chiropractic adjustment and chiropractic care long term is the art, and the vortex are all the supporting elements that make that art stand out. So you can see the vortex as like the supportive lighting and the white walls. Here it is though. So the biggest question you need to get answered if you want to have a high retention office is people need to know what comes next. So I need to know what comes next, otherwise everything gets a bit random and chaotic. But my staff love to know what's coming next, and the clients like to jump on and latch on to a predictable rhythm within the practice, right? So we've got a 6-month vortex rhythm, and it's the practical application of my philosophy on chiropractic and all the things that go into educating my clients and nudging them up their level of understanding in a very timely way with tools that they can take home. It is emergent, right? So the vortex is not an instant thing. The cause and the effect are quite apart from one another. For example, when you let me give you an example of a thing where the cause and effect is really close. That would be social media advertising. You can turn on your Facebook ads and you've got a cause, and the effect is you get new patients really quickly. The vortex doesn't work like that. The vortex, you build it, you put it in, the cause is here. The effect of it, and actually the effect of your objective retention metrics, the effect of it is just way further away than those two. And I find as I age, anything in my life where the cause and the effect are a little bit too close, I'm kind of wary of them. I do prefer, whether it's my relationship with my wife or my own health or raising my children or building my wealth, I just like this cause and effect to have a bit of space where there's a process in between. Just like chiropractic's not an event, it's a process, so is this whole building of loyal clients and developing a loyal developing this loyalty loop within your office. It is holistic in nature, so I might talk to you about it explicitly today with a newsletter and a welcome booklet and all these different parts, but I want to let you know that the sum of those parts is way more. Actually, when you add the parts up, the whole is just way, way bigger. It's beyond the scope of today, but it comes down to your mastery of using those tools and the nuances and the timing in which you use them. It comes down to your staff and CA also using them, and further, it comes down to you sharing with your favorite clients how to use them and how to get engaged with the vortex. It is your media narrative. You can look at the vortex as a marketing machine / education machine for your chiropractic. It's not steeped in high sales or pressure or discounts or anything like this. It's a very slow build of your media narrative that works in a super robust, rhythmic, predictable way. Okay, I want to share with you that, one of the biggest issues with long-term clients is that chiropractic, we tend to get great results quite quickly. And when you're the last person into somebody's mind, you're also often the first person out. So, like it shows here in the diagram, easy in, easy out. There's an acronym actually, it's LIFO. It's LIFO, last in, first out. So if somebody comes into chiropractic care, for example, suffering from headaches, and they go through a series of adjustments and their headaches leave, they tend to leave too because they've got really clearly what they intended to get out of the chiropractic care. So I believe you've got about 4 to 6 weeks to alter the reason why people come into you, and I also believe you can't do it cognitively. You can't do it by explaining chiropractic and verbally trying to educate. It needs to be a lot more systematic, your approach to getting people to do corrective care rather than explain corrective care, or this idea of path to wellness it's very cognitive. It's often introduced too prematurely, and people just don't have they just don't have a readiness to understand what we want them to understand. So one of my nicest things in the game of chiropractic these days is just transforming somebody's understanding and keeping them in care. I kind of obsess over it. I love being around people that just get adjusted more. I do believe their life, their energy, their working results, the way they're with their families is all just so much nicer if people are getting adjusted. So I really just obsess over how can I get this intelligent person sitting in front of me to want to come into chiropractic care for a long time, even though at the moment they think they're coming in for a headache. So I believe that people enter with a symptom. So at least in my office, even though my PVA was above 2,000, every new person I saw, I had to start again. I've been doing this for 27 years, and every new person, I have to drop my curse of knowledge. That's what the welcome booklet does. It grounds me in reality. It's a wonderful tool for mitigating that curse of knowledge and getting clients engaged in their healing process. But they enter with a symptom. But most of my clients, I do believe, stay in care long-term because of these vortex elements. Because these vortex elements that I'll share a couple of them with you today, they provide a different reason for them to come to me. Of course they come for the chiropractic adjustment, but they also come for all the other things that we introduced through that 6-month journey. Now, BJ Palmer, our founder, developer of Chiropractic, he was very famous in saying that symptoms sell. And he's right, they do sell really well. They're easy bites of information for a potential client to actually latch onto and identify with. So if I say headache, jaw pain, low back pain, tingling in my arm, they're all very pragmatic things where people say, oh, I've got that, and now I go and look for a solution, and maybe they choose chiropractic. But at a certain point, all those symptoms leave. So what would other reasons be why they stay in care is the rhythm that they start to lean on, and you altering, not by cognitive understanding, but altering with a pragmatic vortex rhythm. So create a retention vortex. It is orderly. It's not a script, it's a framework. My CAs in Holland and also now in Singapore where I work, most people in life don't like to be micromanaged. So all these tools that we use for the vortex provides a framework. So it really doesn't matter if your CA is introvert, extrovert, into it, not into it, if you're on your A game or you're having private challenges so you're not performing so well in the office. These are tools that will just frame your communication. The longer you have them, the more you engage with them, the more you discover feedback from your community and responses to these vortex tools, your framework will get so nuanced that you'll think, gosh, what did we do before we had one of these retention vortexes in your practice? Also, you'll have a continual, predictable rhythm of touch points for your clients to engage with. So whether it's a quarterly newsletter, whether it's a book of the month, whether it's an immediate post-adjustment rhythm, whether it's a biannual community event, they will be able to latch onto those things. And of course, once you increase your retention rates, the need for new people goes down unless you want to keep adding new people or keep adding associates or growing your numbers. That's completely up to you. But what you will get is kind of like a peace of mind, which is probably the biggest thing I like from having the vortex. It is an asymmetrical leverage, so really think about the inputs you want to put into the office. There's many things that you can try within your chiropractic office to get engagement, get referrals, keep retention, enhance reactivations. A lot of them work really well, but like I said, I want to make sure that we get an 80% return on the 20% effort in the 3 R's, and that's retention, referrals, and reactivations. So if something is not getting engaged by a good 80% of the clients, then I prefer not to put it in and just look for other more extreme forms of leveraged. So like I said, we want to, if we look about inefficient use of lead measures, like a lead measure could be, for example, a healthcare class that you give and people invite people to bring a friend. It could be a newsletter you write, it could be a spinal screening you do in a shopping mall, it could be a discount coupon code that you give to your favorite clients at Christmas. So they're the lead measures, and you can put a lot of effort into them, and unfortunately the lag measures can be somewhat, the very nature of a lag measure is it's retrospective, so you don't really know the impact of it till much later. But what we wanted to find was there something was there a lever we could kind of pull on that created, it was massive effort at the start, but the effort got incrementally more and more tiny over time, but the actual lag measures really increased. So it's almost like this counter leveraged, like a completely asymmetrical leverage, that the less effort led to really a lot more momentous lag measures. So the lag measures for me are just a few metrics like lifetime value, your PVA, your average adjustment fee. There's many things that you measure, but we come down to 6 core metrics, and at the bottom of the pyramid is just the lifetime value. If I know that the lifetime value of my average client is going up, I know that the practice is gaining traction and momentum in a deeper manner than how many new people we got, how many packages do we sell. That's just all a lot more surfacey than those other more simple but more longer term and slower moving metrics. So let's talk about holistic marketing for chiropractors. So when you have a new client sitting in front of you, you don't often know if they're left brain or right brain thinkers. So the left brainers, what are they into? They're into detail, they're into sequences, they want to know data, they want to have scientific proof, they like to hear you use words that let them know that you know what you're talking about. They love science, they love logic and reason. On the other hand, we've got the right brainers, right? So they're a lot more into big picture stuff, they love a creative expression, they're really into visual planning, and they're really into the arts, actually, and using their intuition. So what we do know, however, when we've got a new person sitting in front of us, is that 70% of people learn visually. So it stands to reason, if you don't know if someone's left or right brain and how to speak their language, where you really develop a lot more rapport with them and trust with them as quickly as possible, why don't we just use a visual tool? And in that visual tool, like it says here, big picture, detailed, left brain, right brain. And some people like process and sequence. Some people like creativity. So we have an onboarding sequence, and it's an infographic that we use where the CA can go to the new client and say, okay, here's your current reality, here's your desired outcome, this is what Dr. Vismai is going to do today, this is the examination. Then he'll offer some sort of solution if he feels like he can help you. And then we'll review your care and adjust your chiropractic care frequency based on your lifestyle. So this framework is just a great onboarding tool for left and right brain people because there's a sequence to it. There's a clear roadmap, a clear path. There's a directive from the CA, so she gets perceived, or he gets perceived differently from the get-go than just being a more transactional kind of secretary or writing invoices or answering phones, right? We use visual models because that's what right brainers like. And with the research and data, we have them sprinkled throughout the quarterly newsletter. So often I'll write a scientific paper written by, sometimes within chiropractic, sometimes within medicine, sometimes within quantum healing, so, any kind of scientific papers that help support or are relevant to the major theme that we're doing for that quarter. Here's the really nice thing though. If you build this, you actually build this retention vortex and loyalty loop, you don't need that many people. So Dunbar wrote this paper, I think it was in the 60s, and he talked about these categories of numbers of people that you as a human being can actually have in your life. And he talked about your family, that's your inner circle of 5. Then you've got your close friends. So if your child was getting bullied at school or you were going through a divorce, those 15 friends you'd probably confide in. Then you've got close friends, that's 50. Then you've got 150 friends that you'd invite to your wedding or to and to a party. You've got 500 people where you actually remember how you met them. And then you've got 1,500. That's the maximum number, according to Dunbar, of faces that us humans can recognize. Now, we're not looking for clients like Brad Pitt or Obama. They're names, they're faces that you can bring up immediately when I say those names. But if I talk about your practice, it falls between this 150 and 500 level mark. And it depends on the number of the volume that you'd like to see each week. So if you're a little bit lower with volume, you get into needing like 150 really loyal clients. If you want to see more people, of course, it gets to the other end of the scale. But it's not so many as just this constant elevated door of rotation of new people. Social media plugging, promote, new person into the system, next please kind of rotation. Just makes this whole thing a lot stickier and a lot more momentum, and just greatly simplifies the running of a chiropractic office. Okay, so let's tap into this dormant force. So why do I find it really important to build a community? Why is it that for a high retention chiropractic office, building a community is not an afterthought? If you want to move beyond therapeutic diagnostic intervention, which is what globally we're kind of stuck in as a profession, into non-diagnostic, vitalistic chiropractic, and anywhere in between that kind of two ends of the spectrum, tap into the dormant force of your community. There's just way more of them. So if you are building a vortex, you want to put your own interests and own way that you live your life into your office, right? So that's your behavior. And then you want to include and invite that behavior beyond the adjustment into your community. And when the wave of your behavior and the invites that you include into your community, when they hit together, your retention and the stickiness of people wanting to stick around just accelerates a lot more. And why is that? There's just a lot more of your community than there is of you. Tap into the leverage of more people. You know, in your chiropractic office, in our chiropractic office in Singapore, there's two of us. There's my wife and myself. But we've just got a community developing there. So, you know, tapping into that community and leveraging that community with great tools that benefits the clients, it's just it makes sharing your office and sticking around your office just so much easier than if you just stick to the adjustment and the results that you get from that. Here's just to show you transparently, like we call this wall actually our Hall of Fame. We update it every quarter. We're extremely serious about filling up and collecting our favorite clients and tracking people that drop out of care that did make it onto this list. We have a protocol that we use at the end of every quarter to see what are the people from the previous quarter that we're going to be adding to this. And it grows. Like I said, building a high retention practice, it just takes time. But you need to have a system in place to ensure that it's not only time that passes by, but it actually builds and collects your favorite clients where they share your values, they've got time to come into you, they like you, they can afford chiropractic care a long time. So what we do at the end of each quarter is we update what we call our Hall of Fame. Now you might think just because my PVA was 2,000 to 2,500, it's not like that when I started in Singapore. In fact, our first year in Singapore, we saw 295 new patients, and we had a PVA of, what was it then? There was something like about 65 of those new clients were sticking around in year 2. So that's the first year, right? So the circles of shared values and, you know, common interests and overlaps, it's really almost no overlap in year 1, even though I really mastered this work. But what we did at the start, we just built the vortex. We didn't even try and, you know, get off to a massive, rapid growth. We just thought, let's build our vortex and let's get people to latch onto that. So we found it quite challenging coming out of COVID. We actually started our practice a month before COVID broke out. And actually where we live in Singapore, there's just a lot of expats that all just split, and that was most of our clientele. So it was quite challenging for us to really stick to our principles around let's build the vortex and invite our favorite people into that vortex step by step until it gains massive traction. I'm super proud that we just stuck to that. We didn't do social media. I do believe maybe you've got a year to be able to do that, but if you keep doing it in your practice that you've been having for a long time, your favorite clients are going to be seeing that too. And I do believe it has the potential to cause a little bit of collateral damage. Anyone on this list and photo wall that you see that grows each year, I'd be happy to go and meet them anywhere. They're just people who I really, really like. Sometimes these people drop out of care, you know, because life gets in the way. But I'm very comfortable with messaging any of these people just to check in with them how they are. Not as like a protocol of a Monday morning phone up and reactivate people that forgot appointments. No, this is just human to human, Vismai to the client checking in because they've made their way onto our Hall of Fame. We've got a 12-step protocol that we use to include these people on the Hall of Fame. And it's a unanimous thing for all the staff at the office. So if one of us has our doubts or hesitations, we'll just save that for the next quarter until we all agree that that person is welcome into our Hall of Fame. So what are you going to need, like mentally, to build a vortex? You're going to be able to have to dialogue in many ways. So you're going to have to think scientifically. Most of us can do that. You're going to have to talk, be able to table talk, everything from pain, from corrective care to maintenance care to emotional support to performance enhancing table talk and all the way through to personal development. You're going to have to obsess over systems. You do have to get kind of obsessed with retention for a while. It doesn't mean you have to be obsessed about it forever. Like I'm just extremely curious what keeps people in care long term, but you will need to immerse into this for about a year. It's not something that you can do the seminar on the weekend and implement it Monday. Parts of it you can, but it's not going to shift the dial on your retention metrics. You're going to have to be disciplined, and you're going to have to be kind of okay with boredom. It's a pretty boring rhythm. It's got a bit of volatility in it. The formula for alchemy is making fixed assets volatile and volatile assets fixed. So it's a balance act of making your office change a bit, but not too much. So you're going to have to be kind of comfortable with the fact that there's a quarterly newsletter coming out every quarter. There's a community challenge every 6 months. Every new person that starts care, we're going to have to introduce them to the first four vortex elements that increase intrinsic motivation on their behalf in their healing journey with me. You're going to have to be comfortable of just using the same tools over and over again. You're going to have to be comfortable with book recommendations. You're going to have to be comfortable with sharing music beyond the chiropractic adjustments so that people can use that music to relax at their home, or to have a clear thought, or to help them work more deeply on projects. So there's all these different strings that you're going to have to be comfortable with to pull on repeatedly in a nuanced way until you really master it. And it's something as a profession we're not so used to. You're going to have to be hard work at the start, but you're also going to have to think about this smartly to establish your vortex. You're going to have to be a producer of value. Anything that you put out into the world, you have to put your stamp of approval on it. So the selections of photos, the feature articles that you choose, the way you design it, the paper selection that you have to be the one that approves that quality. And you have to build a community as a primary thought, not as an afterthought. Start there with the welcome booklet. This is the all-important onboarding tool. It's not just an imparter of information. There's a few things in here. It's very client-focused, of course. We have your examination page, which is very typical with chiropractic. We've got that infographic onboarding process. We have, of course, the central nervous system. We use this page here for generating referrals in the report of findings. I think underneath this film there's a course on how to build and how to use this welcome booklet, and how I use it for retention, referrals and reactivations really from the get-go, from day one. You can check that course out. And we use a habit tracker. So they're the first 4 vortex elements that we use. And people that fill this in, they come back to this every day for the first 28 days of their care. It's a little bit of private information there on us, and then there's a really nice statement at the back that chiropractic is not an event, it's a process. So start there by building your welcome booklet so that you get off on the right foot with clients, and you're onboarding them in a way where you're setting them up to make a nice choice and changing the reason why they're coming to you, really from the report of findings. Sometimes I feel with getting people onto long-term chiropractic ideas, not cognitively, not explaining it intellectually, but sometimes I feel like I'm almost like playing snooker, and you've got to kind of make a move first. Your first hit is to set yourself up, and then the second hit is to get the ball in the pocket. It's a bit like that with using the welcome booklet for me sometimes. So sometimes it's a bit of a fishing around with how can I set this person up so that very, very quickly they start to increase their level of awareness and understanding of their body and of chiropractic. And I'd be lost without that tool. Not having a welcome booklet, I really don't know how I would onboard new people just verbally. Every now and then I'm actually out of print, so I don't have one for a little while. And I'm just there's just way less concreteness. I get into this curse of knowledge so quickly where I just start to speak on my level of understanding way too quickly for a client. This tool really helps me pragmatically stay on the reality of the task at hand without needing to get onto my intimate understanding of chiropractic. Then move on to your newsletters. It's a big project to get the first one done. Every newsletter does have its own rhythm. Each newsletter's got certain sections, like we have a feature article, we have a new habit, we have a section or an introduction of one of our favorite clients, we have recommended music, we have what's on in the practice. We always introduce the next quarterly newsletter. Like I said, it needs to have this sequence to it. People need to know what's coming next. We share our social media handles there. And it kind of rotates with every second newsletter might be some sort of symptom like headache, back pain, jaw pain, sciatic pain, things like this. And then other newsletters might be focused more on values and why people buy for long term. So we might have a newsletter on the fact that your body's clever, or a newsletter on that your body's a part of nature, or a newsletter on the fact that your body is a whole system, that we look at it holistically, and we get into a whole feature article on what is holism and why do we look at your body holistically with chiropractic care. People that are already holists, naturalists, vitalists, they're already that long before they come into chiropractic care actually, but I want to link those values with the adjustment itself. These tools really help with that. It also is a great prompt for the CAs to generate referrals in the waiting room from seemingly irrelevant comments. And how do we do that? We call our front desk area our serendipity sphere, because I do believe a lot of opportunities go missing in a lot of chiropractic offices simply because the CAs aren't trained. Their ear is not to the ground listening for seemingly irrelevant comments or engagement with the Vortex tools that they could turn into referrals or reactivations quite quickly. So we call the waiting room like the situation. Different things get said and commented on, and we use the Vortex enabling tools, for example, your quarterly newsletter, your new patient welcome booklet, your lending library, your biannual community challenge, your post-it note, even the book of the month. We use those tools for prompts to create buoyant conversations with the clients. So for example, if somebody's lurking in our lending library, my CA, she'll say, oh, just out of curiosity, what book did you pick up? Or I noticed you pick up a book on walking. Why did you pick that book up? Oh, I'm just da-da-da-da-da. Oh, and then we'll use this thing called stretching the moment, which is a part of the CA training, that whether it's a newsletter, whether it's a book they're picking up or music they're asking about, my CA will somehow bend it into a referral generating conversation or a retention one. And it goes like this. Oh, I noticed you pick up that book on sleep. Is that because you're a poor sleeper, or is it somebody else that you know? Oh, and actually my husband hasn't been sleeping well. Stretching the moment goes like this. How long hasn't your husband been sleeping well for, and how did it start? You don't need to be a chiropractor for that. You just need to stretch the moment with that. Okay, I don't know how long he's been sleeping poorly, but it began after some stress at work, or it began after a car accident, or it began after something, you know. And then you can say, oh, look, Vismai wrote an article about this 2 years ago. Let me go and see if I've got a past copy for you. Okay, why don't you take this home, get your husband to read it. If it makes sense to him, we can make an appointment with him next time you're in. You're in it Thursday at 5 o'clock. And she takes this home. The nice thing about this is it tends to accelerate the time when a client will come in. Once someone says, I'd like to bring my husband in, it can be 6 months, 12 months, 2 weeks. It can be quite random. But this tool, at least if they take it home, they've got to at least pull it out of their bag when they get home, you know. So then it occupies space in the family home. Oh, they asked me today how long you've had it, how did it start, how's it going with you, da-da-da-da-da. They have a read of this, and if it makes sense, let's make an appointment. But then you've got to connect, the CAs have got to connect the dots, and they've got to have the tenacity to follow through on next Thursday when Mrs. Smith is back. Hey, Mrs. Smith, did your husband read the newsletter on sleep? Did he have any questions? Did it make sense to him? Oh, shall we make an appointment? Then the serendipity's found, then the new client's found. But if, on the other hand, the client picks up a book from the lending library and nobody comments, nobody says anything, then serendipity's just lost. There's no moving forward with creating a buoyant conversation that could potentially turn into some sort of referral. Okay, so you're going to need carefully selected habits. You're going to need really successful and beautiful talk triggers to implement the actions, and you're going to have a frequency and a schedule that works really well. Some of these Vortex elements work really well on an immediate post-adjustment rhythm. Some work well on a monthly, some work well every 6 weeks, some work well every quarterly, some work well at biannually. But you get that wrong. If you get your biannual Vortex elements on a monthly level, it messes everything up. So the timing at which you drop these Vortex elements into the customer journey is critical. And we've got this wrong before on many of the elements. So we know what it means. It's either too much work for us or too much overkill for the client if you get it wrong. You need to have a schedule to deliver it. You need to have a special training for your CA. So we've got the CA school, and we've also got the CA framework workbook. So We have lots of CAs in our group. This book's about 200 pages long. Not everybody likes to read that, of course. So what they did as a group, we broke it down. What are the essential tools and how do we get them out into the community? And that's the CA framework. So it's turned into a nice 17-page Vortex tool distribution course. Your CAs don't need to have an intellectual understanding of chiropractic at all, especially at the start. They'll gain one as time goes on, but they do need to see the sense in these tools. The CAs, when they first start using these tools, they do need to get feedback and results from the community for them to justify actually learning the skill of this. But like I said, our CAs actually designed this rhythm and designed a lot of the tools, and it made perfect sense to them. You know, if you've got CAs and they don't have tools, it makes it very difficult for them just to draw patients out of, or referrals out of thin air in the waiting room. It all relies on you and your charisma and your advertising and promoting and you know. If you can really skillfully train and provide tools for your CA for retention referrals, reactivations, then they become financially so much more valuable to you than just simply having a CA to do phone calls and transactions and make appointments and invoicing. So the CA training, it's also really nice. It's going to be quite impossible for me to cover everything in an hour with this film, but I guess you're getting some sort of introduction to it. I'm just going to take a couple of moments now just to share with you how I work with my clients, with my chiropractic coaching clients, that is. I really enjoy this work. It's my life's calling. Like I said, I totally obsess over chiropractic retention and what keeps people in care longer. And I love to help you with your practice and how to build and set up a retention vortex so that you can go on for years with nuanced, skilled acquisition to keep people in chiropractic care longer. Okay, what are you going to end up with if you get into my work? You're going to improve your PVA anywhere from 50% to 500%. Some of my clients have gone way beyond that, but I figure if I can have a PVA of 2,000, I'm sure most people entering my group have got a PVA somewhere between 6 and 60, I would say, more in the lower end of that, more somewhere, the bulk of them would be between 20 and 30 visits, but we can improve that. I will definitely improve client engagement beyond the adjustment too, which also enhances internal referrals. You need to rely way less on your skills of chiropractic. What's really a big privilege that us chiropractors get, because we've done our training, we've done our skill development, we are professionals, we get the privilege of people trusting us. Like, you don't double check qualifications on a lawyer you go to, or a notary or a dentist. I've never asked, and no one's ever asked for my qualification certificate either. That's the privilege we get for being professionals, right? But with these Vortex tools, you don't have to be too busy and too premature ramming chiropractic down people's throats. This can go a lot more nuanced and a lot slower without the curse of knowledge, but still getting the message across, you know. You need to create a toolbox of triggers and habits that you can use over and over again. So I'm into leverage, I'm into repetition. I love the idea of 80-20, that 20% of my effort produces 80% of my results. I love the idea of an asymmetrical leveraged retention tool that I can call upon and lean upon. So some of the things you're going to learn, you're going to get quickly people on habits that make sense to why they're coming in. So they'll first link why they're coming into you with these first 4 Vortex elements. You're going to get the community and your staff onto a very predictable rhythm, which everybody tends to like. You're not going to worry too much in the future about, you know, client drop-off or peaky busy months and then quiet months. The real secret of lifetime care without convincing people of chiropractic. So there's other reasons why people stick around with you. Discover time-tested frequencies and the order of introduction of these frequencies, and develop a newsletter that's used as a tool rather than an importer of information. The world doesn't need more information, but we need more engagement, and people need to engage more in their healing journey with us. Who's this right for? It's right if you've got some associates and you want to be less micromanaging associates. It's great if you've got a couple of new grads in with you. This is, you know, these tools are great for them to lean on while they're developing their power and understanding of chiropractic. If you're a chiropractic business owner and you want to increase your retention metrics for whatever reason, the older I get, the more I like to retain, the less new people I tend to like to see, because I just like the meaningful relationships that come out of people coming to me repeatedly over long term. You might have already a really busy and successful practice on a revenue level, but you might notice that you essentially keep swapping one person for another. So you just want more order and more systems to, let's say, beyond that first 4 months of care. This is, I don't know any other course that's doing it quite like this after that 4 months, yeah? Also, if you want to have a break from your office, I've taken 5 sabbaticals from chiropractic. 4 of those sabbaticals I took when we owned the office, and I always return to a nice between 10 and 20% of growth every year. The shortest sabbatical I took was 3 months. The longest was 12 months while we owned the office. Also, if you want to stop using expensive promotion and marketing agencies, which potentially can do repeated collateral damage to your current client base, if you want to stop that and actually increase the financial value of your own CA sitting there, then this is great material for that. I'm not really so much into super intense promotion, so for me it just fits way more with my personality to try and share with my CA how she can really help me build the practice and give her own increased meaning to the work. And someone who wants to get the right tools in the right people's hands. Like, not all clients are created evenly. I like to build that hall of fame, and I like to make sure that these people get tools from me or my CA that they can easily share with the people that they love, because I want to work with their friends too. So if all this did was, help you retain 5 more people per year, or got 5 internal referrals, or even if it helped you retain your staff, kind of just ask yourself, what would this be worth? Because there is a lot on the line. This is our livelihood. It's your chiropractic office. The future of your life is really on the line. Having a high retention office makes chiropractic work a lot more peaceful, in my opinion, gives a lot more meaning, and it just gives me a really predictable revenue from a business standpoint. Okay, so if you would like to work with me, here's my WhatsApp number. I'll leave it on the screen for a moment. You can just send me a short message and we can book in a call. There's a few different ways actually you can work with me. One is you can quite easily just start by reading my book, Keep Your Clients. There's a couple of courses here on the resource page at thevismai.com. The second way of working with me is you can download the templates, and there's some short courses there with you from the welcome booklet and the newsletter courses. So you can build those quite quickly and then learn how to do it. And the third way, and this is probably the biggest way and the most successful way, is just committing to working with me for a year. And in that way, then you become a part of our group of chiropractic community that are working towards retention. You kind of make a full commitment then for the year. You dabble less in the work, I guess. But that's up to you if you want to have retention as a focus for 12 months, because it is a 12-month process. The irony is, though, chiropractors really explain to clients that chiropractic's not an event, it's a process. But often we don't do that beyond 4 months of care for our own business, So you can send me a WhatsApp. I'm a super approachable guy. Thank you for listening to my presentation today. There are some other resources here on the website, and I'll see you in another film.